baseball expands, as football expands. I mean, football's looking at China. Football plays games in England. NFL plays games in Mexico City now, trying to expand it. It's still not soccer, but I mean they're doing what they can. You've seen the explosion of basketball since the first Dream Team with Magic and Michael and Larry Bird and John Stockton.
Yeah, sure.
That was a birth. I mean, that was really a rebirth of basketball throughout the entire world. And now the United States actually has to field a really, really good team in order to compete. Otherwise, the Spanish are going to bury us. The Argentinians might beat us. Things like that. With that expansion there, it might be taking up a little bit more of the soccer market. But I mean, nobody's going to confuse Mexico for being an NFL country.
Oh, no way!
It's soccer through and through. So we're competing with that, where soccer's embedded in the culture of a lot of these countries. We're doing a good job. I mean, soccer, as it has been for the last several decades, is by far the most participated in sport for kids, for youth. But what we start seeing is at 10, 11, 12, once there more opportunities open up, then players are going to different sports too. Good and bad, but I mean, we'd really like to keep some of our top athletes. I mean, imagine the pipe dream, but like a LeBron James or a Terrell Owens or a Des Bryant.
Imagine those guys on the field.
On the soccer field. I mean, with their or Steph Curry, with LeBron James, he's a monster, and imagine those players.
Right, but you're talking
playing
about
for the United States.
Physical attribute. My question is football. There's not a lot of creativity. Yeah, as a quarterback, you need to know where plays are going. As a running back, you need to know what hole to go through.
Fair enough.
As far as creativity, the only sport, I think, two sports that really compare is hockey and basketball, where you have multiple people.
Well, the coaches have less impact during a game in those sports.
Sure.
I can't call timeout when I'm coaching.
No,
Right.
no.
I'm not calling the plays into my quarterback or to my defensive backs. If all of a sudden the other team is just starting to rout us, I can't call that now. In college you can. They have timeouts. But I'm not calling a timeout in order to stem the tide. Soccer players have to be more creative. Soccer players, honestly, have to be more intelligent because they are the ones who have to make those decisions. The only time that a coach really impacts a game, is before when you're preparing for it, potentially at halftime.
Right.
And then when you make a substitution.
Oh, yeah. So.
I mean, that's the bottom line. That's the only real way a coach is going to impact actual in-game decision-making processes there. So the players have to be more creative. The players have to be more intelligent because they can't rely much on somebody else doing that. So in terms of creativity specifically to the United States, getting back to your original question, I don't know. I thought it was interesting to note in your interview with the academy director, it's we don't have the number of coaches or high quality coaches or high level coaches that we want.
Yeah, I want to talk about coaching, about
but
that.
I would say what makes a high quality coach? Is it just the license that separates these and these people's eyes?
In a lot of people's eyes, yeah. I mean, the licensing is important, and the licensing is important because it says, hey, you've met a criteria. You've shown mastery in this, especially when you're getting your A licenses and then like your advanced nationals and premier diplomas for NSCAA, who also does a fantastic job of training coaches. So yes and no, but it's really honestly through USSF, it's cost prohibitive for a lot of us to go through the licensing program.
You were talking about the cost; they're like crazy.
It's high. And that serves two functions, I think. One, it actually pays for what you're doing, but it also keeps folks out who don't potentially want to make that. I mean, it shows a big commitment, in the way they've restructured the licenses for USSF. It's a big time commitment as well, but it's also why a lot more folks are going through NSCAA because their licensing structure isn't as cost prohibitive. It seems to be a bit more open, and it's even though we have a coaching shortage overall for the amount of players that we have and for what the developmental academy would like to do, at the same time, it's exceedingly restrictive to get your B and get your A licenses now. I know several people who are highly qualified who didn't get their or who weren't accepted to get their A license because they're not specifically with an academy program. So. Now, as time passes and as the restructuring has taken its course, it'll open up more of those coaches. But I know USSF has partnered with NSCAA for the C licenses and below, But as time goes on, potentially, that's one of those things where they could combine more with NSCAA and use the resources. NSCAA is the largest coaching organization in the world. Use the resources and the structures that are in place there to stop the bottlenecks right now of your folks trying to go through the licensing structure and go through and get their B and their A. It's a potential resource, and I don't know what I'm talking about on that, but I would wager I'd wager to guess that they've had those discussions, and I know they have because NSCAA is, like I said, doing C's and below now in partnership with USSF. So they're growing, they're figuring out their bottlenecks, they're figuring out the problems that they have, and they're addressing them. And it'll take time, and personally as a coach and someone who wants to go through and get more licenses and things like that, for me personally, it's a little bit frustrating, but it's one of those things. Live with it. As they figure it out, they're in uncharted territory. They're trying to figure out the good, the bad, and the ugly
right,
there.
Right.
And it looks like they're making really good strides in trying to fix those things. But everything came to a pretty big bottleneck when they started restructuring with the A licenses specifically, and they kind of had to put things on hold there for those people. But I mean, if you have a coaching shortage, it makes sense to reach out and educate more coaches. One of those things would be maybe not making it so cost prohibitive, or opening it up,
pulling down that cost.
But again, that's the economics teacher in me.
I mean, it kind of seems like there's a little pay to play for coaching a little bit, if that makes any sense.
Pay to
coach, right? Like,
start a new trend there.
I mean, they talked about the scholarship program they had in place for USSF. I know NSCAA does that as well through their foundation, but it's kind of at those higher levels. I don't know how many scholarships they offer there, but again, if the problem is we don't have enough coaches, then it seems you'd kind of
productive to not
to keep it that high. But at the same time, I don't know what their cost structure looks like in terms of how much it's actually costing them to train those coaches. When they redeveloped the A license, there's a lot of video analysis that goes in there, so they have to pay people to have a look at that kind of stuff. So
do you think
they might be addressing all these problems internally? It might just be this is where we're currently at, and hopefully down the road, as we have the structure in place, the cost goes down. But right now, it's pretty difficult.
Do you think I'm not trying to I don't know how to describe it, but don't take this in the wrong way. But if we're having this shortage of coaching, as Jared mentioned, why is that even that important? If we don't even, as a culture, accept soccer as one of the main sports, are these coaches always? Is there that big of an impact of a coach on a player? If
at the youth development, more so. And I'll be honest, by the time players get to me, and like with the MPSL team, but by the time the players get to me, if they haven't already had a solid foundation of basic skills, there's not much I can do by the time they hit high school.
Yeah.
I can continue to train with them and work and improve them, but they'll never be top level players either. It does start young. So I'd say the youth coaching, and it's probably they said USSF is expanding down to the U12 level as well. Okay. Well, I mean, the youth coaching is that's going to be the important time when you're doing that. One thing I'd be interested in seeing, especially as they drop the ages down for the academy, where they're going U12, U13, U14. Are how many more soccer-specific injuries they're going to be getting. That's something that you see a lot now when players or kids are starting to specialize at a younger age, and they're getting overuse injuries because the days of, hey, I'll play football during this season, soccer during this season, then baseball during that season. Now you're starting to see younger players at a younger age getting sport-specific injuries because of overusage there. I'm sure USSF is modifying that schedule where where they don't have the U12 players doing the same thing as the U18s, U19s.
That'd be terrible.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, that'd be terrible if they.
But I mean, coaching at the younger age in development is exceedingly important. It's still important as you get older because as the younger players are working more of the technical aspects than the tactical aspects, and as they get older, you're starting to see more and more tactical aspects. These are the responsibilities of the defender, your pressure, cover, balance, stuff like that. But that stuff isn't really all that important if the player can't pass a ball.
Right.
They can't receive a flighted ball. Things like that. So, I mean, just working the technique at those younger ages, and I know USSF and NSCAA are both doing that, where it's, they're really trying to focus on technique, until they're reaching 10, 11, 12, 13 years, and then they go more into the tactical side of it. So your technical coaches, I'd say, are more important at the younger levels than your tactical coaching at the upper levels. But in terms of fixing the creativity issue, a lot of that I just don't know the answer to.
You don't? Yeah, I mean it's definitely a tough
I think it's a more individual thing, like for creativity, like you said, like I think it's more of a cultural thing, like the creativity and whatnot. I mean, I don't know if you can really teach. I think creativity just comes at a certain point, if that makes any sense.
Yes and no. I mean, to a certain extent, yes and no.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have your flat out natural ability,
right?
But in order to master something, it's your 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah.
The more you're doing it, and the more you're practicing, the more deliberate practicing you're doing. I mean, 10,000 hours of stupid practice is a waste of time, but 10,000 hours of deliberate practice where you're doing several things and becoming a master of it. Once you're comfortable in your basic techniques and then branching out into the creativity, I think you can teach some creativity, but you're also going to have your natural players that are just naturally more creative and better than everyone else.
No, it's a sticky situation for the U.S. Academy because they're pouring in a lot of money from the federation, and technically some of these players are eligible to go play for Mexico, for France if they wanted to,
for anywhere basically,
practically anywhere where FIFA sanctions them to go.
As he said, it's FIFA's decision on who can play where. So that's not really USSF's.
Right. I just don't understand why there's no emphasis. Like, well, you know what? We're going to give you the scholarship, but we are going to make sure first we'll go through FIFA. Do you have the right background to play? I mean, as bad as that sounds, but if you're going to the FC Dallas Academy system, you're going through, who cares? That FC Dallas is flipping the bill. Then they're not going to get money from the federation. But if the federation is supporting an academy in Houston, for example, not outside the Houston Dynamo, it should be geared to developing players for the national team. Especially when we are behind the other countries, and we're not just behind the other countries. We are still miles behind these other nations. Mm-hmm.
And it does say something at the same time, though, that some of these players are coming here and being developed. If they're good, I mean, they are good enough to be playing for a national team, and they were developed here in the United States. It is, I mean, if you look at that from a USSF standpoint, that does bring credibility to the way that USSF is doing things, right, and the way the academy system, hey, it's actually working when, hey, we have a guy that's playing for Honduras or that's playing for Mexico or something like that, and they were developed in the United States. It does give the United States a bit more credibility when it comes to that. I honestly don't know the finances of USSF in terms of how much money they're putting in different places, how much they're supporting those.
Well, they have $100 million surplus.
I mean, yeah, they do have this huge surplus.
But what do they do? I don't know what they're doing with that money, though, either. I don't know. If they are putting it, like you said, if FC Dallas is putting the entire bill without help from USSF, then, hey, use it as a farm system. But if USSF is putting the bill for a Houston Academy, I don't know why we keep picking on Houston. But
everyone hates Houston, so I mean,
that's fine. But if they are footing the bill, then maybe there are conditions. But for me, it goes back specifically to what the state admission was for USSF. Had their state admission been what we are going to do with the academy system is to develop players for the national team, then that's what they should be doing. But their state admission is to develop better soccer throughout the United States. Well, they're keeping their word and doing it the way that they're doing it. So I mean, they are keeping in line with their state admission.
All right, Coach. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
It was awesome having you on the show, and you gave us a different perspective that we really aren't hearing as much of the coaching aspect.
Yeah, we had the director who oversees everything, and then you have a coach who has to actually deal
with everything. Exactly.
So it's two perspective you don't often see.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me.
Anytime, Coach.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Wow. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting dialogue today.
Yeah, we had a lot to digest over those two interviews.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listeners, subscribe on iTunes. Real easy. We're on Google Play.
Yeah, we're on Google Play now, so your Android people, you can't complain. You have no excuse. You have to listen to us now.
Yes, you have to. Follow us on Twitter at UncSamSoccerPod.
Yeah, we usually repost all the MLS news and all the latest national team news. So, I mean, give us a follow.
And then follow your two favorite
your boys
hosts.
Too. I mean, I post interesting stuff. I don't know about Steven. I mean,
I'll give you the straight, how it is.
Yeah,
no BS.
Just some Swiss bias. You know how Steven is.
Don't get me started with my Swiss.
Man, your Swiss chocolate's good though.
Oh, it's very good. But we got plenty of more on our next podcast. I can already tell you it's going to be a little more MLS.
It's been a crazy week in MLS, man. So it's definitely gonna make for a fantastic.
We also got the All-Star break, so see you next week. Next time.
Next time.